It's Monday here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We're joined today by Ray Fittipaldo. We're going to talk about this 3-0 Steelers team, and with the report that Russell Wilson's back and fully healthy this week, should that change the Steelers quarterback situation considering how well Justin Fields just played against the Chargers? We'll talk about that with Ray, as well as this offensive line, this defense, and all the things about this Steelers team as they head into week 4 undefeated, all here in the North Shore Drive podcast. Let's get into it.
You are now listening to the North Shore Drive podcast, a show on all things Pittsburgh sports from the writers of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, hosted by Christopher Carter.
Hello and welcome to the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm your host, Chris Carter, joined today by one of our great Steelers beat writers, Ray Fittipaldo. And as always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of our Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes of the North Shore Drive podcast, as well as the daily content that comes out from all of our sports writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Today's show is brought to you by our new presenting sponsor, Edgar Snyder Associates. Whether you're injured in a car accident or hurt on the job, Edgar Snyder Associates has helped injury victims for over 40 years, recovering more than $2 billion on their behalf. If you or a loved one have been seriously injured in an accident, call 1-800-94-EDGAR or visit www.edgarsnyder.com for a free consultation. And remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. Ray, let's talk about this Steelers offense and particularly Justin Fields. Our colleague, Jerry Dulac, reported in pregame that Russell Wilson is expected to be 100% and a full participant this week in practice. But Justin Fields just turned in a third winning performance at the quarterback position. And we know quarterback wins aren't everything. They aren't the full stat. But I looked at that performance, particularly on Sunday against the Chargers, which going into the weekend was the number one scoring defense in the NFL. And I was impressed. I thought Justin Fields delivered the ball in different points of the field. I thought he stayed locked in. Even when he made a mistake and threw an interception, he didn't allow that to break rhythm with what he was doing in the offense. He made some critical throws, and he led an offense that scored 20 points, in a key game that the Steelers, that puts the Steelers up 3-0 now and 2 games ahead of most of the Ravens and the Browns right now, and potentially 3 games if the Bengals lose tonight. But they could have scored more at the end of the game. I look at this situation and I think this is not as easy of a decision as I thought it would be if you had asked me a month ago.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Justin Fields' game yesterday, Chris, after that turnover, I think everyone, when that happened, it seemed like it might be a turning point in the game because the Steelers just had the excellent special teams play where Boswell pinned them and then they forced the punt and they got great field position. And then Fields turns it over on the first play, and you're thinking, oh, boy, is he going to revert back to what he was in Chicago? But, boy, after that, Chris, 7 of 8, 94 yards, and, of course, the big 55-yard touchdown pass to Calvin Austin III. So, I mean, a great response there from Fields. It isn't always pretty. You look at the first half performance, and other than that one touchdown drive, there wasn't a lot going on, but with this defense, Chris, I mean, all you got to do is score 17 or 20 points a game. And in most weeks, that's going to be enough to win. So, Mike Tomlin and his coaching staff have a lot to discuss this week. Yeah, Wilson's likely to be back as a full participant. I think Mike is going to be the one who judges whether he's 100% or not, right? So Russell has to get out of the pocket. He has to show that he could be explosive and run. If he checks those boxes, then maybe we could have a conversation. But until Mike Tomlin is comfortable with Russell Wilson, being a complete quarterback, then I'm not sure we even have to have this conversation yet. I think this is Justin Fields' team right now. He's earned that right. And I have a hard time seeing how they replace him with Russell Wilson this week in Indianapolis.
I think you said the words, he's earned that right, because that's the other thing about this is that Russell Wilson – he was brought into this team to be the starter, right? And to kind of bridge the gap for a little bit while the Steelers figured out their quarterback situation. And that was, shortly before Kenny Pickett, wanted to be traded away, and he was sent away. And the Steelers, when they traded away Kenny Pickett, they went and got Justin Fields. They lost 1 first-round young quarterback. They got another. And Justin Fields has embraced the challenge that he's faced, knowing that, hey, you did not have pole position going into training camp. You were not the guy. But when Russell Wilson suffered an injury, Justin Fields leaped all over the opportunity, and you and I were there in training camp. He struggled early on in the first couple practices. People were like, "Whoa, what's going on here?" He looks kind of erratic, and ever since he's taken every day. He's taken a step forward and another step forward and another step forward. And now, when you stack that many positive days with his skill set, with the strong arm, and what I think he continues to show is an accurate strong arm and his ability to run. Now you're looking at a guy who has all those things going for him, and he's being a better decision maker. And to me, that is the key factor here. I think, like you, I don't think that they should replace him. I think that even if Russell Wilson is 100% healthy this week, I think you go with Justin Fields until he proves you otherwise, that he needs to be taken out, because I think that this is an offense that it's all about, hey, don't turn the ball over, make the plays when they're in front of you. And Justin Fields just that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Justin Fields isn't reminding anyone of Patrick Mahomes. There might be a time, Chris, in the near future when the Steelers lose and he has a bad game. Maybe that's the right time that you insert Russell Wilson into the lineup. But until he has that bad game, I don't think it's fair to the football team. I think when you have that air of confidence about you, when you know a formula works, how can you go away from that, right? Like, if you would put Russell Wilson in there and you would get a bad result this week, it would almost be like you're giving a game away, because right now they know they can win with Justin Fields in the way he's playing right now. So, I think it'll be a calculated decision here by Mike Tomlin. But I think he can make this decision and still, not have the injury as an excuse for Russell Wilson. But hey, I mean, listen, it's been how many weeks now? It's been three weeks, actually a little bit more, since he aggravated that calf injury. So, he's got to practice. He's got to prove it to the coaches. So, maybe we're just like in a transitional period here this week. Fields is going to be the guy this week. Let's see how he does. Let's see how the team does in Indy. And then maybe you make that decision after that. But I don't think you make that decision this week for the Colts.
Yeah, I agree. And, if Russell Wilson comes back and shows that he can sling the ball over the yard, then you have that decision to make. But I still look at Justin Fields. And the other thing, again, Justin Fields is young. He's 25 years old, and he's progressing. And I think that's another factor here that the Steelers, it's tough for them to ignore, is that, like, let's say Justin Fields stays on an upward trajectory. And let's say that this is still kind of closer to his floor than it is to his ceiling. And that if he can be a consistent quarterback that plays higher than this throughout the rest of the season, you have the potential of having your next franchise quarterback right here. And again, I'm not saying that he's done that already, but I think that is the inescapable hope that I think the Steelers have kind of held on, like, well, hey, wait a second. That's why you traded for this guy, was to see if you could turn him into that. Then you don't have to spend future draft picks on quarterbacks, because I think that was very much presumed with the way how things had gone with Kenny Pickett was, well, you're going to have to go get another quarterback soon. Look at Shedeur Sanders or look at Arch Manning in a couple years or whatever. But if Justin Fields keeps developing, I think that's the hope of Omar Khan and Mike Tomlin, is that he might take that problem off their hands so that they could keep rebuilding other parts of the roster around him.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times, a performance like Justin had yesterday, it's based on how the other team is playing too. I mean, really, for 2 quarters, Chris, the Chargers had the Steelers offense pretty well defended. A lot of run blitzes. I mean, they were just bringing heat. From the outside, they were bringing heat from the inside, and they weren't going to let the Steelers run the ball and control the game that way. So, almost by default, Arthur Smith said, okay, we have to give Justin Fields a little bit of freedom here. We have to see if he can make some plays in the passing game. And credit to him, he was able to go out there and do that. So, that's another feather in his cap here as we go along. And I really think, just getting back to your original point, really the theme for Justin Fields throughout the first, whatever it is, 2 months of his Steelers tenure going back to training camp, it's the steady improvement, practice to practice in training camp, now game to game here during the regular season. And that's really all you could ask for if you're Mike Tomlin or if you're Arthur Smith.
Absolutely. I want to talk more about this offense, especially this offensive line, because I thought they played pretty well, and especially in the second half. In the second half, when the Steelers got going, especially in the fourth quarter, when the run game took over and really closed the game out. There, we'll talk about that next here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo. But first, what I remind you, this show is brought to you by Edgar Snyder and Associates. If you're injured in an accident, you're probably wondering what's next. Well, for over 40 years, Edgar Snyder and Associates has helped injury victims answer that question. Whether it's gathering evidence, collecting medical records, or dealing with the insurance companies, Edgar Snyder and Associates has helped over 75,000 people handle the what's next question. Call 1-800-94-EDGAR or visit www.edgarsnyder.com for a free consultation. And remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you.
Between beauty and durability, making your neighbors jealous has never been easier. Introducing LP Smart Side Expert Finish Trim and Siding, now in brushed smooth texture. Available in 16 versatile colors, LP Smart Side Expert Finish products help create timeless designs and beautiful, longer-lasting dream homes. That's the beauty of brushed smooth.
Back here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo. Ray, let's talk about this offensive line. Early on, like you were saying, the Chargers were all over the Steelers. They were not letting them move the ball. They were averaging less than 2 yards per carry. They were pretty much crushing the run game. They said, okay, Justin Fields, you go ahead and beat us. But again, that's why I think Justin Fields has put himself in the consideration to be QB1 for the Steelers, is that they challenged him to do that, and he did that. But when you go to the fourth quarter, the Steelers were able to run the ball pretty well. Najee Harris ended up averaging just under 4 yards per carry on 18 runs, and I think that would have been much higher if he wasn't under siege in the first half when he was breaking tackles in the backfield just to get 2 yards. But then Cordarrelle Patterson came in for Jaylen Warren, who was hurt in this game, and Cordarrelle Patterson had 4 carries for 33 yards. He was able to impose as well, and you saw at the end of the game, the Steelers got the ball with about, I think it was 4:55, with 5 minutes left to go in the game. They went 65 yards down to like the 1 or 2 yard line and took knees to end the game. They made them play. And I talked to Zach Frazier, the Steelers center, after the game. He said, we made them tap out. And he says, that's the style of football that we want to play. Ray, I think that this wasn't the complete game that says the offensive line has arrived. Yeah. But I do ask you, is this potentially a turning point where maybe they're starting to figure some things out on the offensive line?
I mean, I definitely think it's a turning point, and just in terms of this young group getting more confidence. If you look at all of the changes, really going back to the preseason, Chris, how many young guys are in this lineup? Frazier playing, of course, for Nate Herbig, who was injured. Yesterday, you had Spencer Anderson and Mason McCormick rotating at left guard, and also Mason McCormick getting some snaps as a tackle eligible. So, they've had a lot of different moving pieces. Broderick Jones back in this week because Fautanu is on IR now. So, it's really impressive that they've been able to win these games when they've had so many injuries up front. And it's really impressive to me that these young guys have been ready for their opportunity. So people have kind of complained when the rushing stats aren't there. What's up with Pat Meyer? Is he a good coach? But he's got these guys ready to play. And it might not always show up in the first quarter. It might not show up in the second quarter. But you saw yesterday how it showed up in the fourth quarter. And there's something to be said for being able to close out a game in the fashion that the Steelers did. And it's not always going to be 5 yards a carry in the first half. It's not always going to be pretty. But when teams like the Steelers can lean on you, when they can impose your will, it's impressive to watch. And that's exactly what happened yesterday at Acrisure Stadium.
Yeah, I think that was definitely the case there. And again, this was against a tough front for the Chargers. And I know Joey Bosa went down after the first play. By the way, he went up against Broderick Jones, who I think had a really good game for the Steelers. But they still had Khalil Mack. They still had guys. They were still blitzing a lot of linebackers. And this offensive line did not look overwhelmed. I think that they were outmatched in the early part of the game. I think that the Chargers were certainly setting the tone. But as the game wore on, and I think this is part of what the Steelers wanted to be, right, Ray? Like, They won the time of possession at the end of the game, 33-51 to 26-09. It's the third straight game that they've won time of possession. And you saw at the end of the game, the Chargers, they weren't able to get to be as aggressive as they started the game out as. And that's the style of football you want the Steelers to play, because at the same time, guess what the Steelers defense was doing? They were dominating late because they weren't on the field and they weren't tired. And Justin Fields even said that at one point a Chargers player kind of joked like, hey, we're glad you guys didn't go at the end of the 2-minute warning of the first half because they were starting to feel it. To me, this is kind of what the Steelers aim to do. It's still not the perfect picture that they want for their offensive line. I think they'd want the run game to get started a lot earlier than it did. But as far as like you said, this is a young line. Mason McCormick's a rookie. He was rotating in with Spencer Anderson, who was a second-year, 7th-round pick. Broderick Jones, second-year player who just got benched for a rookie, who's now going to miss most of the season, if not all of the season, and Troy Fautanu. Zach Frazier is a rookie who just made his 3rd start. Your 2 most experienced guys are James Daniels, who's 26 years old, and Dan Moore Jr., who's in the 4th year of his NFL career. And you still don't have Isaac Seumalo back yet, who's been your best offensive lineman and was supposed to be the leader of this group. And yet you're able to find big moments like that where you're able to close games out. It's stuff like that I think can be momentum builders for younger teams, which I think sometimes Steelers fans forget, because for so long, Ray, and you covered this team during that time, they had an older offensive line because they found those guys in the early 2010s and DeCastro and those guys, and that unit carried the team for pretty much a whole decade. And it's time to refine those pillar guys. But now it's games like these that could be momentum centers that say, hey, this is where we figured some things out. Let's carry this over and make this a regular staple of the offense.
Yeah, Isaac Seumalo is going to come back soon, perhaps even this week against Indianapolis. I think that's going to be great for the Steelers' young line. You have another vet presence in the middle of that line just to stabilize that situation. Spencer Anderson did okay, but they wanted to work Mason McCormick in. But I think the good news for the Steelers, when you project this out, towards, let's say, the tail end of the 2024 season, if there are injuries, or 2025, 2026, it seems like they got a future starter in Mason McCormick. He's been a quick study, Chris. They want to get him in the lineup. You saw that yesterday at guard, both and at the extra tackle situation. So it seems like he's got that in him as well. So this is going to be a line that you said it's going to grow together like Marquise Pouncey, David DeCastro, Marcus Gilbert did, a decade or more ago. And if the Steelers can have a line like that again, they'll be in really good shape, because that line was responsible for that, protecting Ben Roethlisberger during those killer B eras, blocking for Le'Veon Bell. They were just dominant, for a nice stretch there last decade. So if the Steelers can get that level of play again, this offense is going to be set up well for the future.
According to Pro Football Focus, the Steelers' offensive line allowed 6 pressures in a game where they had 35 dropbacks. 2 were from Broderick Jones, 2 were from Dan Moore Jr., 1 from Pat Freiermuth, 1 from Zach Frazier, but that was it. And you consider where the Steelers have been this year, where you look at even just last week, when they played the Broncos, James Daniels had allowed 4, Spencer Anderson allowed 3, Troy Fautanu allowed 2, or you go back to week 1 when they were giving up pressures. Like, this is a Steelers offensive line that could have crumbled in this game, but didn't, and they rose out to be on top. And again, it doesn't mean that they've arrived, but I do think it's a place where they can plant their flag and say, see, this is what we can be like if we get it together, if we start putting things together. If they take that approach, and I get the sense that these guys, they're humble, but they're confident. They know where they can get there. I think that this is a really good sign, like you said, that if these guys start to figure it out and they become like that offensive line of the 2010s, watch out, world, because the Steelers offense might be back a lot sooner than you thought.
Yep. Steady growth week to week, just like the quarterback situation.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a young offensive line, that's going to happen too. And that's another positive for Pat Meyer and Arthur Smith as they try to get this offense taking steps each week.
Natural tongue twister there, the offensive line coach with the star tight end. I want to get to this defense, because as much as the offense is exciting to talk about, the young unit, and they did put up 20 points a season high in this game, we got to talk about the defense, because, Ray, I think it's elite. We'll do that on the other side of this break here of the North Shore Drive podcast for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo. But first, I'll remind you this show is also brought to you by Savinas, Kane, and Gallucci. They're your mesothelioma and asbestos lawyers with over 85 years of experience. Call them today for a free consultation at Savinas, Kane, and Gallucci. We're also brought to you by Moon Township Honda, where you can go get your new Honda in Moon Township from 5802 University Boulevard in Moon Township, PA, or go to their website, moonhonda.com. Here's a message from our friends at Moon Township Honda.
To build the Honda CR-V Hybrid, we took everything you love about the CR-V and kicked it up a notch with greater power for a CR-V unlike any before. Adventure confidently with Honda, car and driver's most awarded brand in 10 best history. The CR-V and CR-V Hybrid, part of the Honda line of rugged vehicles. Visit your local Honda dealer where new vehicles are arriving daily. Buy online or reserve from select Honda dealers.
Back here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo. Ray, this defense came out. They did allow an early touchdown on a busted coverage. Turns out Minkah Fitzpatrick took the blame for that one after the game. But this defense held the Chargers to -5 yards in the second half.
Yeah.
This was defensive dominance that I don't think I have seen since like the Casey Hampton, James Ferrier, James Harris and Troy Polamalu days, because the Steelers defense didn't just dominate. They dominated without needing to even force a single turnover. Because if you look back at like 2019, 2020, when the Steelers defense was playing really well in the newer era with TJ Watt and Minkah Fitzpatrick and Cam Heyward, they were dominating turnovers in games. They were creating 4 or 5 turnovers in some games, 2 or 3 turnovers in others. And that allowed them to flip the field, give the Steelers offense the ball back, and they were winning games like that. This defense didn't commit a single turnover and still held the Chargers offense in check the entire game outside of one play where they had a busted coverage. And they did this. This was the first time since 2018 that the Steelers have won a game that they've lost the turnover battle by double digits. And to me, that's very impressive for this defense, that they were able to do this without the big splash plays. Ray, this defense right now ranks number 1 in points allowed, number 1 in yards allowed, number 1 in first downs allowed, and number 1 in rushing touchdowns allowed.
Yep.
Is this defense potentially the best in the NFL? We asked the question if they're going to be one of the best. Yeah. Does this defense have a really good shot at being the best in the league over time?
Yeah, I mean, Chris, just look at the future schedule. I mean, Anthony Richardson is struggling for the Colts. You get another young quarterback that you can maybe, feast on. I mean, they just did it last week to Bo Nix, and I think that's something that a matchup we could look forward to on Sunday. Yeah, it gets harder after that. Dak Prescott presumably will probably have a few more answers than some of these other quarterbacks have. But why not? Why can't the Steelers be a top 5 defense? And it's interesting the way you framed it with the turnovers. Everybody was thinking this year Minkah Fitzpatrick has to get back to being Minkah ball, and he's got to be a turnover machine. But he's been really quiet, and it's not that he's playing bad, but the Steelers are winning with their front 7 right now.
Yep.
Defensive line is doing a great job against the run. TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, and Nick Herbig are doing their thing on the outside. And I think the inside linebackers maybe quieter the first couple of weeks, but they really showed up yesterday. Landon Roberts had that early sack, and Patrick Queen was much more active, 8 tackles. So I think Patrick Queen's only going to get better, Chris. I think it did take him a little bit of time to get warmed up to playing for a new team. But make no mistake, this team is winning with the front 7 because they're crushing the run, and then they're putting teams in bad downs and distances, and they're getting the ball back. So really impressive stuff so far. Yeah, I want to see them against some better competition here in the coming weeks. But like I said, I don't necessarily know that that's going to come this coming weekend either.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't know that this Indy offense. I mean, they run the ball well with Jonathan Taylor. You look back at how they beat the Bears this past weekend. Anthony Richardson did not look sharp. In fact, I think he threw 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. They won exclusively because of their run game against the Bears defense. I look at the Steelers defense, and I think good luck trying that against this group. I mean, like, look, they got Quentin Nelson. They got an offensive line over there in Indy, and they beat the Steelers last year. But this Steelers defense is different. They're healthy right now for the most part. Cam Heyward, I think, is playing out of his mind when you look at how he's destroying offensive linemen. He is through 3 weeks, Ray, I think Cam Heyward's shown why they gave him an extension. He's very much justified it, and he's playing it. But it's not just him. Keanu Benton's getting after it. Patrick Queen, I agree, had a very good game in this week. And even when Alex Highsmith went down, it used to be the death knell where if Watt or Highsmith went down, this team was in trouble. But now you've got Nick Herbig, and not even rookie Nick Herbig anymore. Now you've got Nick Herbig with a year of experience under his belt. He gets 2 sacks in this game where he beats. One of them was against Rashawn Slater. Another was against Rashawn Slater's backup. And also TJ Watt, of course, being TJ Watt, getting the first sack of anyone who got on Joe Alt. Joe Alt, by the way, who completely shut down Max Crosby 2 weeks ago. And people were saying, oh, man, TJ Watt better watch out. And I was thinking, like, I think TJ Watt's better than Max Crosby. I think he showed that with this game. But we just described like 8 different players. We still haven't gotten to Joey Porter Jr. We still haven't gotten to Deshaun Elliott and guys like that. That's how deep this defense is with ways to beat you.
Yeah, I mean, having a guy like Nick Herbig is so valuable for Terrell Austin. You know, not every team in the NFL runs a 3-4, so I'm not going to go overboard. But I think Nick Herbig could probably be a starter on about half the teams in the NFL. And he's your top reserve. So it's almost like, you know, nothing against Alex Highsmith, but Chris, I don't know that there's much of a drop-off when you have to go to Nick Herbig. Now, you know, they're probably going to have to do something this week with depth. If Alex can't play, you probably don't want to count on DeMarvin Leal. Just to be your top backup, you probably got to have somebody else come in here and be a number 4. But as long as TJ and Nick can stay healthy during this period when Alex Highsmith is out, I don't think the Steelers are going to be any worse for their wear. So it's not only there, too. They got depth on the inside. Peyton Wilson comes in for Landon Roberts. You know, the only place where really you have to worry about depth right now is probably the secondary, because Corey Trice is injured now. And, you know, they were pretty much down to James Pierre yesterday because Darius Rush didn't get a helmet. So, yeah, there's probably some depth concerns in secondary, but I think they've done a really nice job of building up depth in the front 7, and we saw evidence of that yesterday.
Certainly did. I think that that was supposed to be a trench war game. You know, the Chargers wanted to play the style of ball the Steelers want to play, and the Steelers proved they were better at playing that style. Now, will that hold over when they play other teams that play other styles? We'll see, because styles make fights, and oftentimes that can dictate the entire pace of games. But as far as through 3 games, the Steelers have said, hey, this is who we are. We're going to stick to this blueprint. And 3 times they've come out victorious, this time winning by double digits for the first time this season. And like you said, now they get to face the Colts this week. But still, lots of questions heading into it. Will the Steelers, truly get back Russell Wilson, and will that change their starting quarterback situation? Will Isaac Seumalo be back and healthy, and how will that buttress what the offensive line's been doing? That, more defensive questions, and we'll also see tonight, what do the Bengals do against the Commanders? How far up can the Steelers get in the AFC North before their second half of the season begins, when they actually get to start playing AFC North opponents? That could be a really big way. If they continue to build up on this early lead on AFC North opponents, it could be a great way to head into that gauntlet at the end of the season and say, hey, you have a lot of ground to give and a lot of space and while you're still also a young and improving team.
Yeah, they're doing what we said they had to do back in the spring and summer. Take advantage of this early schedule, get a little bit of a cushion so you have that in your favor when the schedule gets really tough in the second half. And listen, Patrick Mahomes he's 3-0 too, Chris. They got them on Christmas Day. You got the Eagles in the second half. The Ravens and the Bengals are going to be really tough too. So 2-game lead in the division, 3 weeks into the season. That's not half bad.
Not half bad at all. We'll keep you updated here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter here with Ray Fittipaldo. Thanks for tuning in on your Monday here for the Monday episode. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of our Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes of the North Shore Drive podcast, as well as our daily content that comes out from all of our sports writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Mike Tomlin Talks Tuesday. We'll talk about that on the Wednesday episode of the North Shore Drive podcast. Stay here tuned for all of that here from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all the sports coverage from the Post-Gazette that we have to offer, visit post-gazette.com.